Birth control did not begin in 1960. It began in 1825 BCE. The Kahun Gynaecological Papyrus, Petrie Museum, Catalog UC 32057. By 168 BCE, Han Chinese women had the Mawangdui silk recipes. By the 12th century, Trota of Salerno wrote them in Latin. Then, 1486. The Malleus Maleficarum, Speyer printing. Contraception was renamed a witch's crime. Modern science discovered the same compounds in 1960, without apologizing to anyone. For 4,000 years, women had the recipe. The Vatican just stopped killing the ones who remembered. The Kahun papyrus is older than the pyramids of Giza were old when Cleopatra was born. 12th dynasty, Egypt, 1825 BCE. Petrie Museum, London. Object number UC 32057. It prescribes acacia gum, honey, and dates, ground and inserted vaginally. For 3,000 years, that was dismissed as superstition. Then in 2020, the FDA approved Phexxi, a lactic and citric acid gel. The active mechanism, fermented acacia gum releases lactic acid, which lowers vaginal pH to spermicidal levels. The Egyptians were not lucky. They were measuring. The Ebers Papyrus, 1550 BCE, Leipzig University Library, prescribes a different protocol. It also names crocodile dung. We have to talk about this honestly. Crocodile dung is not folk wisdom. It is the medical desperation of women under reproductive coercion in a society where pregnancy was a survival risk and refusal was not a legal option. The Egyptians did not have everything right, but they had something the patronizing colonial archive does not have. They were trying. With measurement, with iteration, with named scribes. Mawangdui Tomb 3, Changsha, Hunan Province. Sealed 168 BCE. Inside, silk manuscripts, including the Wuxia Bingfang, the recipes for 52 ailments. Manuscript Catalog, MSVI. Donald Harper, Early Chinese Medical Literature. Keegan Paul Routledge, 1998. The manuscript prescribes contraceptive protocols using mercury, a known abortifacient, and a class of plant compounds we now identify as anti-fertility. 168 BCE, 200 years before Pliny. A woman is buried with the recipe. The reason most history channels open with Egypt and Greece isn't because that's where contraception started. It's because that's where the English language archive was indexed first. The archive is not the world. The archive is the part of the world that got catalogued. Aristotle, Historia Animalium, 583a30b3. He observed contraceptive practices but did not understand them. The Hippocratic Corpus. Loeb Classical Library 538. Contains explicit gynecological recipes. Cyrenus of Ephesus. Gynaecology, Book 1, Chapters 19 and 6163. Aussay Temkin Translation. Johns Hopkins University Press, 1956. The most systematic ancient pharmacopoeia of contraception. He names dozens of plants. Pliny the Elder, Natural History, 19.15. Silphium extinct, allegedly, by his lifetime. Parashko 2003, Conservation Biology, 17 to 925. A 2021 paper by Miski and Plants 10 to 102, PMC 7825337, argues Ferula drudana may be a surviving relative, and we hedge here, because the identification is contested. These men cite each other. They quote each other. They do not cite the women who taught them. They did not cite them. For 1,500 years, Pliny mourned Silphium, like a man mourns a wine vintage. The women who knew how to harvest it were never asked. The Greco-Roman archive is not a record of what was known. It is a record of who was allowed to write what was known down. And what got written down was always, written from the outside looking in by men describing a practice they had not invented and could not perform, attributed to no one but themselves. This is the first move of the suppressor, not destruction. Citation theft. Byzantine tradition. Laurentian Codex Plut, 75.3, 10th to 11th century manuscript. A woman named Metrodora, she wrote, on the diseases and cures of women. Laurentian, Kotsopoulos 2018, Encephalos 55-9. Kousis, Athens 1945. We hedge. The manuscript dates are disputed across the 1st through 6th centuries CE. The author's lifetime is contested. What is not contested is the contents. 83 chapters of gynecological practice, contraceptive recipes, diagnostic procedures. The earliest known medical text attributed to a named woman in the Greek tradition. The recipe survived. Her year did not. That asymmetry is the archive signature. It is what an oppressive regime of knowledge looks like in its mature form, not deletion, but selective preservation. The technique is kept. The technician is unnamed. Metrodora is the first named female protagonist in this story. The first of three, Rufaida al-Aslamia, approximately 620 CE, Medina. The earliest documented female nurse and battlefield clinician in Islamic tradition. Sources: Ibn Hisham's Sirah and Ibn Sa'd's Tabaqat. Modern reference: Jan and Cassele 1998. Image: Journal of Nursing Scholarship, 30-267, PubMed Identifier 1-4349996. We hedge here. The Sirah register is hagiographic comparable to early Christian saint biographies. The historical Rufaida is partly recoverable, partly a constructed figure of veneration. Both are true at once. What is documented: she trained other women, ran a field hospital tent at the Battle of the Trench, and the practice of women's clinical medicine in early Islamic society passed through her. 4 centuries later, Avicenna. Canon of Medicine, Book 3, Fen 21, approximately 1025 CE. Nathan, 1991. British Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, 98-725. Avicenna lists 20 contraceptive substances. He cites Galen, Dioscorides, and earlier Arab physicians. He does not cite Rufaida. Avicenna got the textbook. Rufaida got a hadith. The knowledge moved forward. The lineage of the women who carried it did not. 12th century, Scola Medica Salernitana, the first medieval medical school in Europe. A woman named Trota. She wrote De Curis Mulierum, Treatments for Women, Monica Green's edition, the Trotula, University of Pennsylvania Press, 2001. And her monograph, Making Women's Medicine Masculine, Oxford University Press, 2008. For 700 years, Trota was read as Trotula, a Latin diminutive that, by the late medieval period, was assumed to be the title of a composite text by anonymous authors. By the 17th century, scholars argued no individual woman named Trota had ever existed. Monica Green's archival work in the 1990s and 2000s recovered her. A real woman, a real author, a real medical practitioner at Salerno. Her work was rewritten, compiled, attributed elsewhere, and then her name was edited out and replaced with a diminutive that read as a title. The polite scholarly word for this is compilation. The accurate word is editorial erasure. Trota is the second named female protagonist. She did not vanish from history by accident. She was processed out of it slowly, by men who used her work and kept the recipes. The Florentine Codex, compiled 1577 by the Franciscan friar Bernardino de Sahagún with Nahua scribes. 12 books. Biblioteca Medicea Lorenziana, Manuscript Mediceo Palatino, 218220. Book 10, Folio 105 Verso, Book 11. The Nahua Scribes Record, Cihuapatli Woman's Medicine, Scientific Identification, Montanoa Tomentosa. Hahn and colleagues, Contraception 23-625, 1981. PubMed, 723-8041. They tested zoapatal extract and confirmed anti-fertility activity. Levine and colleagues, Contraception 27-1, 1983, replicated the finding. The pharmacology paper is from 1981. The recipe is from before 1492. Mexica women were not lucky. They had a peer-reviewed pharmacopoeia, transmitted orally, written down under duress, under colonial supervision in a 16th-century manuscript that is now a Renaissance treasure in Florence. The word cihuapatli never stopped being used. In the markets of Oaxaca, in 2026, curanderas still call the plant by its Nahuatl name. The 5th of December 1484, Pope Innocent VIII issues the papal bull Summus Desiderantes Effectibus. Bullarium Romanum, English translation, Coors and Peters, Witchcraft in Europe, 1100-1700, University of Pennsylvania Press, 2001, pages 107 through 112. The bull authorizes inquisitors to prosecute witchcraft. It specifically names contraception, abortion, and the harming of fetuses. Heinrich Kramer publishes Malleus Maleficarum, The Hammer of Witches, printed at Speyer. Mackay's critical edition, Cambridge University Press, 2009, and Mackay rejects the traditional co-attribution to Jakob Sprenger. Kramer wrote it alone. The Malleus names midwives as the most dangerous witches because they have access to women's bodies, contraceptive knowledge, and the moment of birth. Walpurga, Hausmannen. Licensed midwife, Dillingen, 1587. Burned alive after torture extracted confession. This is not witch trial trivia. This is state-sanctioned femicide. They had the bull. They had the hammer. They had the pyre. The recipe that saved lives in 1550 BCE was, by 1587, evidence for execution. 3,137 years. Same herbs, same women, different verdict. Enovid. FDA approved. 1,960. The first oral contraceptive pill. The pharmaceutical industry's official story is that scientists discovered hormonal contraception. They did not invent. They reformulated. John Riddle. Eve's Herbs. Harvard University Press. 1,997. And Contraception and Abortion from the Ancient World to the Renaissance. Harvard UP. 1,992. Riddle's thesis. Pre-1960 herbal contraceptives were not folklore. They were a working pharmacopoeia that the European witch hunts systematically destroyed. We hedge here. Helen King, Medical History 42 to 412, 1998, and Rebecca Fleming, Bryn Mawr Classical Review, the 8th of April, 1993, both push back on Riddle's strongest demographic claims. The contested point is how much of antiquity's population control was pharmacologically effective versus magical thinking versus selective infanticide. The uncontested point is that the recipes existed, were transmitted, and were targeted by the church. A brief note before we continue. These are archival citations, not medical instructions. The point is whose archive, not whose prescription. What else survives in the pharmacopoeia? Queen Anne's lace. Daucus carota. Ismail 2023. PMC 10-781147. Confirmed anti-fertility activity. Neem. Azadi Rakta Indica. NCBI bookshelf entry NBK 234639, Tiwari and colleagues, PMC 4155053. South Asian midwives have used it for centuries. The pharmacology paper is from this century. Cihuapatli. Han 1981. We already met it. Acacia gum. Egyptian Kahun Papyrus. 1825 BCE. FDA approved as Fexi. 2020. It was not lost. It was erased. The difference is who needs an apology and who needs to give one. When you hear discovered, ask who lost it. When you hear folklore, ask whose archive. When you hear lost, ask if anyone was burned for keeping it. Pliny the Elder wrote that Silphium went extinct because of greed. He was half right. The other half is this. The women who knew how to use it were never asked. The archive that survived is the archive of the men who did not need to know. To the Vietnamese grandmothers who still teach about Rao Ngót, thank you. To the Indian midwives who still hand down neem from mother to daughter, thank you. To the Mexica curanderas who still call it cihuapatli, by its Nahuatl name, in the market at Oaxaca, in 2026, thank you. To the Yoruba and Akan herbalists whose ethnographic records the colonial archive destroyed, but whose practice survived in diaspora kitchens from Salvador to Brooklyn, thank you. The pill is not new. The pharmacology paper is from 1960. The recipe is from before any of us were born. You are the proof. They had the recipe in 1825 BCE. They were burned for it in 1587. The Vatican did not lose the knowledge. It lost the women who carried it. 1960 did not invent the pill. It just stopped killing the women who remembered.